So what do we talk about when we talk about state capture? Let me start with what we don't talk about. It's not about traditional notions of corruption. Traditional notions of corruption have always focused much more or totally on the implementation, getting around the implementation of the set rules of the game, getting a permit, paying a bribe for a contract, procurement, and so on. And that was due to the observation we made 30 years ago, and the studies 30 years ago in economies in transition. We are talking about the shaping, the formation, and the manipulation of the rules of the game, not just getting around the implementation, but how they're formed. And that's what state capture is all about. It's essentially the shaping of the policies, of the laws, of the regulations, and the institutions of the state. And by so doing, this is a fundamentally different type of issue. It's much more costly for a society because it's about the formation. It's not just getting around it. It's a multiple of the traditional corruption issues. And very importantly, it can be legal. It's not necessarily strictly legal. And that's almost by construction, because it's that same elite, which can be in the private sector, industry realm, financial sector realm, and or in the political elite, or colluding both. Those are in charge of shaping, in fact, those very rules. We have embarked in an initiative, research initiative, to try to measure, to have an index for the whole world, for most of the countries of the world for which there is sufficient data. And that's an initial effort. The data, it's useful, provides insights. It has to be used, addressed, analyzed with caution, because like any data in governance and corruption and related, there are margins of error associated with that. But with that type of caution, one can still use it for analysis and for cautious interpretation. And finally, in terms of measurement, one finds that there are very significant differences across countries in what type of state capture is taking place. What are the objects of state capture? Is it more the judiciary side, or is it more the political or policy making side, and so on? So it's very, very important to, if one is going to do something about it, what is this useful for? To do the serious analysis, to go through this data, complemented with diagnostics at the country level, to see what are the major most important focuses of state capture, because they can vary very significantly from one setting to another. There's no one blueprint. One of them related to the a priori conceptual distinction between corruption, traditional corruption, and state capture. We find that, in fact, when one measures it, there are differences across countries, across the world. For many countries, there are some similarities, but overall, there are also some significant differences. In some countries in the world, including mine, which is Chile, for instance, which has traditionally has relatively low levels of corruption, or moderate, the level of state capture is much higher. In the United States, similarly so. In Europe, there are also significant differences, and there are countries where it is a reverse, where traditional corruption it's much more endemic than state capture. So that's one insight, that there are significant differences. Overall, in fact, countries which are more advanced industrialized countries, tend to have a relatively higher level of state capture than the level of measured corruption in the legal sense. So we have been underestimating historically the level of misgovernance in advanced economies by focusing only on traditional illegal measure corruption. State capture is relatively high in that sense, and that's also an important distinction. Now, why this data is very important also for action and for policy making is that it provides early flags for prevention. There's nothing more important, it's just like in public health and other, than focusing more right now on prevention of state capture. By the time that the country is fully captured, Russia nowadays and a number of others in the world, is extremely hard, and it will take a long time for that to be reverted. So this has to be caught early when the direction of travel may be in the wrong direction, but the country is not fully captured. The data allows to see very clearly in early years, this is not going well. We're not yet fully captured, but this is a time for action. And it would provide some suggestions of where to intervene and what to do that would have to be complemented with the in-country work in a collective action way.